Welcome to the government circus. Governments, right? They're like that weird uncle at a family reunion. You know, the one with strong opinions about mayonnaise. They can be confusing, frustrating, and occasionally entertaining, but just like that weird uncle, they're also kind of important. Think about it. Who keeps the lights on? Who makes sure your tap water isn't also a sewage system? Governments. They set the rules, collect the taxes, and occasionally invade a country or two, but let's not dwell on that. From the majestic halls of Buckingham Palace to the chaotic streets of a country in the throes of revolution, governments come in all shapes and sizes. So, buckle up as we take a whirlwind tour of the world's most popular and some not so popular forms of government. Get ready to laugh, cry, and maybe even learn a thing or two. It's going to be a wild ride. Let's start with the classics, monarchy. Imagine a world ruled by kings and queens, princes and princesses. Sounds like a Disney movie, right? Well, not always. Monarchy is basically rule by royalty, where power is passed down through a family like a precious heirloom. The UK, with its beloved and occasionally controversial royal family, is a prime example. Then there's Saudi Arabia, where the House of Saud has been calling the shots for almost a century. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a certain charm to the whole monarchy thing. The fancy hats, the waving to crowds from balconies, the corgis. But let's just say the whole divine right to rule thing might need a bit of an update for the 21st century. I mean, have you met some of these royals? They're just as messed up as the rest of us, except they have better jewelry. Still, monarchy, despite its quirks, reminds us of simpler times. Times when we didn't have to worry about things like elections or political debates. Ah, those were the days. Or maybe not. Next up, we have democracy, the system that promises rule by the people. It's the political equivalent of a potluck dinner. Everyone brings something to the table, and hopefully, no one gets food poisoning. In a democracy, citizens get to choose their leaders through, you guessed it, elections. The United States, with its nail-biting presidential races and endless campaign ads, is a prime example. Then there's Switzerland, a country so democratic they practically vote on what kind of cheese to have for breakfast. Of course, democracy isn't without its flaws. Elections can be messy affairs, full of broken promises, smear campaigns, and the occasional hanging chad. And let's not forget the joys of partisan gridlock, where politicians spend more time arguing with each other than actually governing. But hey, at least in a democracy, you have the right to complain about your government. That's gotta count for something, right? Now, let's move on to something a little more, shall we say, controlling. Authoritarianism is where things start to get a bit more intense. In an authoritarian regime, the government has all the power, and they're not afraid to use it. Think of it like your strict parents, but instead of grounding you, they throw you in jail for questioning their authority. Fun times. Russia, under the iron fist of Vladimir Putin, is often cited as an example of an authoritarian state. Then there's North Korea, where the Kim dynasty has perfected the art of total control. Want to watch a Western movie? Too bad. Want to criticize the government? Enjoy your stay in a labor camp? The upside? Well, at least things are efficient. No messy debates, no pesky elections, just good old-fashioned obedience. Of course, you might have to sacrifice a few of those pesky human rights, but hey, you can't have it all, can you? Dictatorship, like a bad boss, but on a national scale. Next, we have dictatorship, which is basically authoritarianism on steroids. If authoritarianism is like your strict parents, then dictatorship is like that power-hungry boss who micromanages your every move and takes credit for all your good ideas. In a dictatorship, all the power rests in the hands of one person, the dictator. And let me tell you, these guys don't believe in term limits. They're like that house guest who never leaves, except they're in charge of the entire country. North Korea, with its supreme leader Kim Jong-un, is a textbook example of a dictatorship. This is a country where the leader's birthday is a national holiday, and where questioning the government can land you and your entire family in hot water. The bright side? Well, at least you know who to blame when things go wrong. And trust me, in a dictatorship, things usually go wrong. Communism. Sharing is caring, whether you like it or not. Let's move on to communism, a system that sparked revolutions, divided nations, and inspired countless heated debates. It's the political equivalent of that friend who insists on splitting the bill evenly, even though you only had a salad and they ordered the lobster. In a nutshell, communism is all about shared wealth and resources. The idea is to create a classless society where everyone is equal. Sounds great in theory, right? Well, the execution hasn't always been so smooth. China, despite its recent embrace of capitalism, still officially identifies as a communist state. Then there's the former Soviet Union, which, well, let's just say things didn't exactly go according to plan. At the heart of communism is Marxism, a theory developed by Karl Marx, surprise, surprise, that critiques capitalism and advocates for a worker-led revolution. It's a dense and complex ideology that's been interpreted and misinterpreted in countless ways. The good news? Theoretically, everyone is equal in a communist society. The bad news? Everyone is equally poor. Just kidding. Kind of. Fascism, extreme nationalism with a catchy soundtrack. Now let's talk about fascism, a political ideology that's about as popular as a root canal. It's like that friend who's really into their country's flag, except they're also really into suppressing dissent and starting wars. Fascism is basically extreme nationalism on steroids. It's all about national unity, military strength, and a healthy dose of xenophobia. Think of it as a toxic cocktail of authoritarianism and aggressive patriotism. Nazi Germany, under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, is the most infamous example of fascism in action. The Nazis combined a warped sense of national pride with brutal authoritarianism, leading to one of the darkest chapters in human history. The upside? Well, fascist regimes tend to be very good at building roads and making the trains run on time. Of course, they also tend to be very good at genocide and human rights abuses. So, there's that. Theocracy, when God gets political. Next up we have theocracy, a system that combines religion and politics in a way that would make even the most devout atheist blush. Imagine a world where your priest is also your president, your rabbi is your representative, and your imam is in charge of the IRS. In a theocracy, religious leaders are the ones calling the shots. Think of it as a government run by your most judgmental Sunday school teacher. Iran, with its supreme leader and council of guardians, is a modern-day example of a theocracy. Then there's Vatican City, the world's smallest country, and the epicenter of the Catholic Church. The bright side? Well, at least you know the leaders are morally righteous. Or at least they claim to be. And hey, maybe if we're all on our best behavior, we'll get into the good place when we die. Anarchy, hold on to your hats. And finally we come to anarchy, the no-rules system that's every teenager's dream and every parent's nightmare. It's the political equivalent of a mosh pit, chaotic, unpredictable, and potentially dangerous. In anarchy there is no government. None whatsoever. It's a free-for-all, a survival of the fittest, a recipe for disaster, or maybe a utopia, depending on your perspective. Now, you might be thinking, has there ever been a truly anarchist society? And the answer is complicated. There have been periods of anarchy throughout history, usually in the aftermath of a revolution or a collapse of government. But these periods are usually short-lived and often quite violent. The upside? Well, at least you're truly free. Free to do whatever you want, whenever you want, consequences be damned. Just don't come crying to me when your neighbor declares themselves supreme overlord and demands tribute in the form of your firstborn child. Government soup, a quick recap. So, there you have it, a crash course in the world's most popular and some not-so-popular forms of government. Monarchy, ruled by a royal family. Think fancy hats and questionable bloodlines. Democracy, ruled by the people, in theory. Think elections, debates, and the occasional scandal. Authoritarianism, ruled by a strong central government. Think strict parents with a penchant for censorship. Dictatorship, ruled by one person with absolute power. Think bad bosses and personality cults. Communism, ruled by the working class, in theory. Think shared resources and a healthy dose of propaganda. Fascism, ruled by extreme nationalism and authoritarianism. Think aggressive patriotism and a disdain for human rights. Theocracy, ruled by religious leaders. Think God and government all rolled into one. Anarchy, ruled by no one. Think chaos, freedom, and a healthy dose of uncertainty. It's a veritable smorgasbord of political systems, each with its own unique flavor of crazy. And there you have it. A whirlwind tour of the wacky world of government. We've laughed, we've cried, we've questioned the very fabric of human civilization. But most importantly, we've learned that no matter what system of government you live under, there's always something to complain about. So, the next time you're feeling frustrated with your government, and let's be honest, it's only a matter of time, just remember this. It could be worse. You could be living in a dictatorship or a theocracy or worse, an HOA. Stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay funny. Because if we can't laugh at the absurdity of it all, then what's the point? Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Blessings as you continue on your journey to becoming an informed global citizen.